Hello, everyone. Here's a walkthrough video for the Chinese exclusion activity. So if you're feeling stuck, watch this and hopefully it'll help out. So to begin, the Chinese Exclusion Act was an act that stopped the immigration of Chinese to America. So to start with, we'll read this introduction paragraph. As more and more Chinese arrived in the West in the mid-19th century, some white Americans began to view them with suspicion and hostility. Anti-Chinese clubs were formed and violence against Chinese immigrants flared. By the late 1800s, prominent citizens in California pressured Congress to pass a law preventing any more Chinese from entering the United States. A law was passed in 1879, but President Hayes vetoed it because it violated rights guaranteed to the Chinese in an 1868 treaty. The treaty was then revised to answer these objections. Believing itself freed from the constraints of the treaty, Congress passed the first Exclusion Act in 1882. Great controversy raised over this and subsequent exclusion acts passed in 1892 and 1902. So this beginning introduction paragraph identifies that the Chinese Exclusion Act itself went against previous treaties, particularly one in 1868, and violated rights guaranteed to the Chinese. So as we scroll down here, you'll see that there are two primary sources, one from Colonel Ingersoll and one from Representative Gary. At the bottom here, you will see 3 questions to answer. This is what you got to answer for the assignment. So to look at these questions first, then we'll do the reading of the primary sources, because it's always a good idea to know what you're looking for when you're reading. Okay, it's called reading for a purpose. So question 1, what is Colonel Ingersoll's, is he in support or against the act? Same thing with Representative Gary. So we want to know whose side is on who, like who supports it, who doesn't. Okay, another question is an argument that Colonel Ingersoll gives in support of the position that he gives. Okay, so we got to know why he thinks a certain way. Okay, and then for the third question, both these men have opposing views. What is one fact on which they disagree that can be easily verified to find out what the speaker is more accurate, or which speaker is more accurate? So let's just see who's who, right? So let's read this first one from Colonel Ingersoll. The law is barbarous, contrary to the spirit and genius of American institutions, and was passed in violation of a solemn treaty stipulations. So it sounds like Ingersoll is saying that the act is barbarous and goes against the genius of American institutions, and was actually passed in violation with probably previous treaty. It is to the interest of this country to maintain friendly relations with China. We want the trade of nearly 1/4 of the human race. We are losing the trade of China by pandering to the prejudices of an ignorant and cruel. Our country is an asylum, a refuge for the oppressed of all nations, of all races. Let us retrace our steps, repeal the law, and accomplish what we justly desire by civilized means. Let us treat China we would England, and above all, let us respect the rights of men. Okay, so it sounds like Colonel Ingersoll is against the act. He thinks that it's cruel. It doesn't represent America very well. We want to have friendly relations. It's important with China trade-wise, which is obviously true today. And he also wants to respect the rights of men everywhere. So now let's read about Representative Gary's beliefs about the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese law was justified by the circumstances prevailing in this country. It was in accordance with the treaties made between this government and China. It has imposed no undue or unjust hardship upon the Chinese people here and was a proper and just exercise of the power of this country, or as part of this country. So as you can see, Representative Gary is for the Chinese Exclusion Act. He thinks it's justified based on what the country wants. He also says that the treaties, previous treaties, back it up and go with it, is what he's claiming. So American interests in the far west, the maintenance of American civilization, and the just protection of American labor and the Chinese competition is more of consequence than the profits of the Chinese trade or the maintenance of missionary stations in China. So he's arguing that he wants to protect American labor force so they don't lose jobs to Chinese immigrants, is what he is believing. Okay, so for that first question, Colonel Ingersoll is against the Chinese Exclusion Act because he thinks it's cruel, doesn't match up with American values. We need trade from China and have friendly relations, and he also wants to protect rights of everybody. Versus Representative Gary, who's for the act, okay? He believes it's justified based on previous treaties, and he believes that it's protecting American labor and eliminating hardships in the United States, in that it's not affecting Chinese people, is what he's claiming. So question 2. So what argument does Colonel Ingersoll offer to support his position that the United States should maintain a friendly relation with China? So in the text, he identifies that trade is very important. Okay, trade of 1/4 of the human race. I would say that is very important. Another thing that he says is important is just to treat everybody equal. You know, let's treat the Chinese like we would an English men, right? With all respect of the rights of men. So those are 2 examples of you could put in for that answer on his argument. It doesn't ask about Representative Gary, but he obviously is trying to support American labor and protect workers' interests. He's assuming that the Chinese are taking jobs away from America. For the third question, so these 2 men differ, right? They have opposing viewpoints. What is one fact that can be easily verified to make it more accurate? Which fact would this be, and how might you verify the truth? So this question, we have to go back to the introduction paragraph here. And in the middle, it talks about a law was passed in 1789, but Hayes vetoed it because it violated rights guaranteed to the Chinese in an 1868 treaty. So basically, we could determine which one of these men is not telling the truth by reviewing previous treaties with China, especially this one from 1868. After this, it goes on to say that the treaty was revised to almost remove these restraints so Congress could pass the Chinese Exclusion Act. Okay. So one way to learn more about who's telling the truth is to review previous treaties with China and see if they go against any of the rights that were guaranteed to China and immigrants to the United States. Because Gary is claiming that it didn't was justified based on prevailing law, right? In accordance with other treaties. We could look those treaties up to see if what was guaranteed to the Chinese. and if the Chinese Exclusion Act was unfair or went against those previous treaties. If you have further questions, please reach out and let me know. But just answer those 3 questions and you'll be all set. Thank you. Have a good day.